Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to look into today is that of convicted killer Nikko Jenkins. Let me just say here that this case is really messed up. So yeah, he killed 4 people in 2013, but not because he wanted to, but because the ancient Egyptian god Apophis had actually told him to. Does anyone watch SG1? This was a suggested case by Julie, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions that you guys have. And if you have any more, of course, let me know. I just like to let you know, I mean no disrespect to anyone I talk about. I've just gathered this information from the internet to compile into a video for educational purposes. Nikko Allen Jenkins was born on the 16th of September in 1986 to parents David and Lori in Omaha, Nebraska. It would seem that Nikko didn't have the easiest of childhoods. His entire family was pretty much known to the authorities as hellraisers. Nikko's first involvement with the police would come at the tender age of 7, when he decides that it's a good idea to bring in a handgun into school. You know, like 7-year-olds do. Thankfully, no one was hurt in this instance. At the age of 11, he was removed from his group home for pretty much kicking the crap out of all the kids there. And then at just 17 years old, Nikko was sentenced for assaults and carjackings. Whilst serving his sentence, so he was already in jail, he was serving his sentence, he then also got convicted and faced up to 5 more years on top of his sentence for assaulting a prison guard when he was on furlough for his grandmother's funeral. The weird thing was the judge put these sentences to run concurrently rather than, I don't know, adding the 5 years onto the end, which he really should have done, but they didn't. So basically he added no more time to his sentence. He was released from prison in 2013 at the age of 26 after having served 10.5 years in jail. As you can see from the dates, this is the same year that he kills 4 people. In fact, it was literally within a month of his release that he went on to kill 4 people, which obviously I'll get into. Whilst Nikko was inside, he also decided to scar up and tattoo his own face because, I don't know, he wanted a new look, and that was now the new him, I guess. Just under 2 weeks after his release, Nikko killed 2 men. Juan Aripina, who was 26 years old, and Jorge Cajillo Ruiz, who was 29 years old. He attacked them whilst they were in the car, parked up near a city swimming pool. The 2 men were shot in the back of the heads, and their bodies were found on the 11th of August in 2013 by a patrol officer. Nikko had turned out the pockets and then just left. The thing was, nobody could really fathom why, because Nikko didn't know these men. He didn't have a clue who they was. He had never met them before. I don't know, he just decided that it would be a good idea to kill them, I guess. Which, let me tell you, it wasn't. On the 19th of August, just 8 days later, Nikko's next victim was found at 7 AM. This was the body of 22-year-old Curtis Bradford. He had been shot 2 times in the back and was found outside of the detached garage at 18th and Clark Street by a man who was going home from his night shift at a convenience store, which must have been a horrible shock for him to come across. Police attended the scene and found out that just days before this murder, Curtis was actually posing with Nikko on Facebook in photos. Out of his 4 victims, Nikko only knew Curtis, so he didn't know any of the other 3 victims, like, at all. But him and Curtis had actually met in prison, and I guess had formed a friendship, which for Curtis turned out to be a very unfortunate friendship. The last victim on Nikko's spree was Andrea Kruger. A deputy was actually responding to a shots fired call, and he came across her body around 2:15 AM on the 21st of August. She was found lying on the road of 168th and 4th Street and had multiple shot wounds. She was coming home after finishing her bartending shift. The police worked the scene and found CCTV of her locking up at the bar where she worked, called Deja Vu Lounge, at around 1:47 AM. Her car was found at 6:30 PM that day, and it had been abandoned 12 miles away in an alley. The police believe that Andrea's car was abandoned roughly 2.5 hours after it was actually stolen. And they said that there was this feeble attempt at someone trying to set the interior of the car on fire. But obviously weren't very successful in it, and they just gave up. Nikko Jenkins was now a spree killer, and he was arrested on the 30th of August. but not even for the murders in question. He was arrested for unrelated threats he'd made to an ex-girlfriend who he threatened to kill her and her family, and she said that she had seen one of his cousins handing him a gun. So she of course called the police. She was frightened. The police at that point had already been building a case against him and collecting the evidence that they needed to charge him for the murders. Whilst he was in custody, the police had managed to gather CCTV of a woman Nikko knew buying this distinctive ammunition, which they had linked to the murders. So that was their link into him as well.
Nikko Jenkins was an indiscriminate killer. Some victims he knew, others he did not.
Then on the 3rd of September in 2013, Nikko confessed that yes, he did kill all 4 of those victims in an interview that lasted 8 hours. In this confession, he told the police that he had killed the victims as a sacrifice to Apophis, who, as I said, is a Greek god, the god of chaos. After being in jail for around 2 months, he wrote this letter to the Omaha World Herald, where he asked the paper to help him and the families of his victims. He said that he wants and needs psychiatric help and that the health department had full knowledge of Apophis and his demonic forces. I told you this case was a strange one. After his confession, he was charged with 4 counts of murder, and then on the 19th of February 2014, Nikko filed for a lawsuit for $24.5 million from the state of Nebraska. He claimed that he was wrongfully released from prison, that he had made claims whilst he was there of hearing all these voices from Apophis, but he was just completely ignored. He said that solitary confinement augmented his schizophrenia and that he never got help for his mental health issues. He then claimed that it was the correctional officials' fault for the 4 murders that he had committed. So it was their fault that he killed 4 people. I get it. His girlfriend went public stating that he was real life crazy, as she put it, and that Apophis actually saved him from committing suicide whilst he was in solitary confinement, because he told him that if he would do what he said and do what he demanded, that he would make sure that he was okay. He claimed to have schizophrenia, bipolar, and obsessive compulsive disorder, and after these claims the judge ordered that he have a psych evaluation, because this man was failed so many times by the system, and we'd all failed this man in his mental health. Well, let me tell you that the evaluation they had in court, they just blatantly came out with that he was faking it all. They believed that he was faking it all. One of them also said that out of all the people that he had seen, Nikko was by far the most dangerous. After the judge then ordered a psych eval for Nikko, the psychiatrist concluded that he didn't have any of the mental health issues that he was claiming that he had, but that he did have antisocial personality disorder and was likely faking psychotic symptoms and making up the voices that he heard in his head to justify his actions. As a result of that, he was ruled as fit to stand trial for the 4 murders he had committed. Now, Nikko was allowed to represent himself, which he wanted, and throughout the trial he carried on with the previous statement that the Greek god had told him to do it. During the time in the courtroom, he would speak in tongues, he would howl and even laugh when prosecutors were going into the details of the victims' murders. On the 16th of April in 2014, Judge Peter Battalion found Nikko Jenkins guilty of all 4 murders. So his sentencing was originally scheduled for the 11th of August, but it was delayed for a while to determine as to whether Nikko was capable of understanding the death penalty. And whilst he was being held, whilst it was deciding all of this, he began making some body modifications. He began mutilating his body with a razor blade. So he tried to carve 666 into his head, which is obviously a satanic symbol of the devil or whatever it is. But he did it in a mirror, and he didn't think about it being mirrored. And so he just pretty much ended up with kind of an upside down 999. Which is the complete opposite as to what he wanted to achieve. He mutilated himself on several occasions, including carving the word Satan on his face. He sliced his tongue to try and make it look more like a snake's, and it ended up with him having 9 lacerations. He smeared blood all over his cell walls too. It was thought that he did it to get a reaction off his cellmates. Like he was doing all this stuff so that they would come over and be like, oh my god, he needs help. But they got wise to it. They were just kind of thinking, well, it's just Nikko doing what Nikko does. It's just normal for him. And then when he didn't get the reaction that he wanted, he would then panic and call for help himself. He tried to hang himself as well on a couple of occasions, and he also told prison employees that he self-mutilates so that he can use the insanity defense and embarrass the administration. He also did very strange things like drink his own urine and even a stranger sniff up his own semen. like he was sniffing drugs or something. And he went on to mutilate his penis to make it look like a snake, which they kind of already do. So I don't know what his idea of making it look like a snake would be. But yeah, either way, that left him needing 27 stitches. Ouch. He did all this with a razor, and nobody knows how he got it. So somebody was obviously slipping it to him somewhere, but nobody knew how. And he just did it so often. It was in the news and everything because he just kept doing it all the time. And people was wondering how he was managing it. They just couldn't fathom it, but he just kept doing it anyway. So we're now in May of 2017, and they have finally decided that Nikko is capable of standing trial for the death penalty, and a 3-judge panel sentenced him to death. He was also sentenced to so many years in prison on weapons charges connected with the murders. And when I say so many years, I mean 450 years to be exact, which kind of seems like overkill. They were making sure that he was never going to get out, but I mean, come on. He's not living 450 years. Unless Apophis extends his life for him. In 2018 and 2019, he attempted to kill himself by pulling off the tiles off the wall and sharpening them and slitting his own throat, along with, I believe, clawing his own eyes out. It's said that the attempts on his life are surely in the double digits by now. This man is seriously disturbed, but the courts and stuff has ruled him as not mentally ill. So what can you do with that? It seems like he didn't really stand a chance with his upbringing and the people that he was around. I'm not in any way excusing his actions because, of course, I would never do that. He still claims to be mentally ill, and he did try to appeal his sentence on the 20th of April in 2020. The Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal, thus once more concluding that he is not mentally ill. So as it stands, Nikko Jenkins is supposedly not mentally ill and will never get out of prison and has been sentenced to death. This case really surprised me looking into it. It's really disturbing and it's really tragic. With a story of a very sick mind who claims that he's mentally ill, but you know, he's had so many tests and they all say that he's not. It looks like he's just doing it to try and make it look like he is so that he can get the insanity plea, but who knows? And with some sort of system failure along the line, it ended up in 4 people losing their lives. And that is just heartbreaking. My heart goes out to all of those families involved. Let me know what you guys think of this one, because it's definitely a wild one. But yeah, that's the end of the case. If you have any suggestions, let me know and I'll look into them for you. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Nikko Jenkins. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!